Okay, we'll carry on with the SLR video. The first one was pretty long and rather drawn out, and I apologise for that, but there's a lot of information to cover. I'll try and make this one a wee bit shorter. What I'm going to do with this video is show you some of the accessories that you can get for the rifle, either as things that you can use in a practical sense, or things that you can add just to make it more collectible and historically correct. We're also going to talk about the correct zeroing position and how to zero with this type of rifle. Again, because certainly when I've been in America and shooting with people there, it seems to be a very dim sort of understanding of the principles of zeroing. So we'll take you through how to zero a rifle like this, and in fact any firearm that you're using, but particularly semi-automatics. Okay, so here we have our bog standard L1A1 Lithgow manufactured FN, and the sort of accessories that you can get for the rifle to bring it up to the configuration that you would have seen it in service. Firstly, we've got our bayonet. It's a very, very similar pattern bayonet to the one that was used on the Lee Enfield, the Jungle Carbine. It has this very pronounced and signature type, a chisel, comes to a very fine point. This bayonet's not in particularly good condition. Often the ones that we get have been chromed because they were used, just to sexy them up for parade purposes. There is a case, a very well-known case, of the bayonet being used in the Falklands, and it was utilised by a number of guys in anger. Argentinians were killed on the end of these things, but the most famous incident was a guy called Bob Lawrence, or Robert Lawrence. He was a junior officer in the Scots Guards. He wrote a book called Tumbledown. He was very badly wounded. He got shot in the head and lost quite a bit of his brain mass, and he's been struggling ever since. But he tells the story of going up Mount Tumbledown in a night attack, coming across an Argentinian soldier. He wasn't sure whether he was dead or just bluffing, and he stuck this bayonet into the guy's arm. The guy was not dead, and reacted as most of us would by sitting up, spinning around, and breaking the bayonet in the process, obliging this young British officer to finish him off with a broken bayonet, which he writes about as being a particularly horrific experience. Be honest with you, I'm going to call bullshit on that. If you have a look at the mass of that bayonet, that is a thick chunk of steel, and there is no way on God's earth that you're going to break that by sticking it in somebody and twisting it. Just not credible. So anyway, there it is. It comes with a scabbard that fits onto a webbed frog, and if we put the bayonet on the rifle, you will see what the issue is. Overall, it's a long rifle anyway, and this then becomes an extremely long rifle, very, very hard to wield. Obviously it gives you a bit more reach than your opponent, but it's, for all practical purposes, you're not going to get good results crossing bayonets with somebody with a rifle of this dimensions. But there it is anyway. The other thing that you can get, they're readily available on the aftermarket, is the blank firing adapter. There were two different patterns. This is the Australian pattern. It's the same as the one that we used in the New Zealand Army. Ours were yellow, these ones are orange. I believe the British one is slightly different. It simply screws on to the muzzle of the rifle and enables you to shoot blanks. Without it, there's not enough gas going through the rifle to cycle it. So we used to cover these things up with black tape to make them look a little bit less like a clown gun when we were exercising. That's the BFA. The other part, which is a significant addition, if you can get hold of it, is the suit sight, the Sight Unit Infantry Trilux. This sight was introduced in the 1970s as a result of British service in Northern Ireland. When they first went into Ireland, they were pretty much invited in by the Catholic community in Northern Ireland to protect them from the Loyalists. A number of British soldiers were observed with telescopic sights, field-modified telescopic sights welded to the top of their dust covers. Now, politically, that was completely unacceptable. There were troops that were there in ostensibly a peacekeeping role, wandering around with evil sniper's rifles, so they were told to take them off. However, the problem with Northern Ireland is that the weather there is particularly bad. It tends to be overcast and dark, and with iron sights in an urban environment, the British soldiers were finding it very difficult to get any sort of contrast between their foresight and a person or whatever that they were shooting at. So they introduced the suit sight. It is really more of a light gathering optic. There is a degree of magnification. I think from memory it's about 4 times. I'll show you what the pointer looks like. It comes down from the top of the sight. It was a great addition. It gives a very good contrast in low light environment. It's gassed up with a type of gas called Trilux, and hence the name Trilux Sight Unit Infantry Trilux, or suit sight, which is the official name for this particular type of sight. Really, it's the first. I guess it really is the first ACOG to be introduced as a standard optic in any of the Western armies. The gas itself is radioactive, and it only has a shelf life of about 10 or 15 years. So you're not going to find an original issue that still has an active gas. What it does, it just illuminates the tip of the reticle, surrounds it with a sort of an orange light, and it enables you to get a really good contrast in low light environments with the pointer into the target. Now there is, I believe, a company in the United States who is regassing these units, and there is also a company that does a modification where they put some kind of battery unit in, and you can reactivate that illuminated reticle. I would, personally, I wouldn't bother. It's not that much of a deal. But if you can get them regassed up, well, I suppose if you're a fanatic about these rifles, then that would be desirable. The problem with this is that it adds a lot of weight to the rifle. It was only issued really as one per section or one per platoon. It effectively became a de facto designated marksman scope. We had them, got very excited about using them, but the thing you have to understand is that there is a real trick to shooting with this type of sight. If you have a look through the sight itself, you'll see something that looks vaguely like this. It's a simple post that comes down to a very, very fine point. There is a degree of magnification. You do get more ambient light sucked into the scope. That's all very well and good. However, using such a finely defined pointer means that the rifle is very difficult to use in anything other than the prone or supported position. You have to be supported in some way. If not, what you tend to find is that when you've got your sight picture, you've got your sight lined up, very quickly with muscle fatigue that the point of the sight starts dancing around, and the tendency is to snatch at the trigger and try and get your shot away while the pointer is dancing through the mass of the target. You find that the accuracy just goes out the window until you get used to the idea that it's acceptable just to get the point of the target vaguely in the mass of the centre of the target, and then to really concentrate on a smooth trigger operation. Unless you're prepared to do that, you're going to find that the performance of the sight is pretty bloody disappointing. And again, ideally, the ideal position to be is in the prone supported. You'll also notice, if I bring the rifle around in this direction, that it does oblige you to turn your head much more in a much more exaggerated fashion in order to be able to push up against the sight. There is a rubber cup here. You have to kind of push your head up against that to get the complete circle, the correct sight picture. That's intended just to trap any light that might radiate away from the scope and illuminate your face in low light or night conditions. So that's why they did it, but it does oblige, takes quite a bit of training, quite a bit of getting used to getting your head position canted like that. So it's a really good thing to have, but you really have to be very, very deliberate and disciplined with your shooting techniques in order to utilise it properly. Now I showed you here the dust cover. It mounts on straight over the top. You have to get yourself one of the new dust covers. There are two different types on the market. There is the mil spec, which are getting quite hard to find. There's also a couple of companies that are doing aftermarket. They've taken a fabricated mount and spot welded it onto the dust cover. Those ones are pretty dodgy. I've seen them fail an awful lot. The welds aren't good enough. So if you can, get yourself the mil spec. The sight just sits across the top in this fashion here, and it's retained with a locking arm. You can see this here. There's a very distinctive movement of the arm and a spring that holds it under tension. So that gets dropped over the top, and then the arm gets locked down. If you're storing this for any length of time, don't leave the sight on the mount, because over time that spring will weaken. If that happens, the sight becomes absolutely useless. As I indicated, you have to push up against the sight with your head to get the correct sight picture, and if there's any kind of slacken that spring, the entire scope will start to move and your zero just goes out the window. So if you're going to buy one, the first things to check is that the spring has a degree of tension. It hasn't been left, it's not old and worn. There is a PDF file. If you put it into Google search engine, site unit infantry Trilux, you'll come up with a PDF file that will give you all the information pertaining to zeroing the scope. Very quickly, there are two positions, short range, long range. Forward, the arm, this little arm here that moves, can be pushed to the forward position. That's for shooting up to 300 metres, bring it back, and that's for shooting at beyond 300 up to 500 metres. There are adjustment screws for elevation and depression when you're zeroing on the front, and there is also a screw co-located with this little lever down here which will enable you to do lateral elevation. There's a small switch on the top here that simply allows more of the Trilux gas through and either increases or decreases the amount of gas that's being allowed through and radiating around the tip, so you can adjust that to whatever level is appropriate. These things will set you back about $600-700, maybe a couple of $100 for the mount. They are a bloody good bit of kit, but don't be surprised when you first use them to find that your shooting's not that fantastic. It takes a lot of training and a lot of concentration to get the most out of the scope. Now there's a whole bunch of different aftermarket magazines, as well as a magazine loading tool which I had here a few seconds ago. These are available aftermarket. They're a complete waste of time. We had them, we never used them, we never issued them. They're just unnecessary. The magazines for the SLR are big metal box magazines. They're very tough. I've seen them dented and crushed and they still function pretty well. They're heavy, thick gauge metal, and it's got a wide enough mouth, the opening of the magazine, that you can load faster by hand than you can with the loading tool. And it's simply a case of ensuring that you get all your projectiles facing in one direction, and then you just push and fire. And you can do that pretty bloody quickly. You can get 20 rounds bombed up very fast, faster than you can with the loading tool. I'm going to put that over here so it's nowhere near the rifle. The surplus ammunition is readily available. We get a lot of South African stuff here. Where is it? I'll just have a quick look. What did I do with it? There it is. It comes packaged up in a waterproof sealed container which contains 140 rounds. Really great. Good for long-term storage and for just toting around. Inside you get a box of 20 rounds. First line for soldiers in the New Zealand Australian Army was 120 rounds. We carried that in 4 magazines. 120 rounds you can go through very quickly indeed. So in addition to the 4 magazines that we had in our webbing, we had another first line, what was called a first line of 120 rounds in our packs. One of the determinations about whether you would choose to carry a rifle like this or the M16s, which we were also running, is to do with the ammunition carriage. You can carry twice as much 5.56 as you can 7.62, and that is a big deal. It really is. You can snap shoot and engage fleeting targets much more easily with the Armalite family of rifles than this. It's too long, too heavy, and a little bit slower to bring into the shoulder than the Armalite. The recoil isn't jarring, but it is definitely a push, and it does knock you off sight much more dramatically than 5.56. So as a close country, jungle, bush kind of war weapon, the M16 is better. And although the old soldiers always maintained that they preferred this rifle, the fact of the matter is it's long, it's heavy, you can't carry as much ammunition. Most of us in the real world would have preferred to carry an M16. I certainly would. But like I say, it is what it is. It's a full-length battle rifle, and as such, I think it's the best in the business. The sort of things that you will get aftermarket, again, they're available on eBay. This is the hold-all, the cleaning kit, and this will hold a brush, a pull-through, an oil bottle, and your combination tool. Very easy to get and important to have. And the flannelette, standard issue flannelette, it's called 4x2. Looks like this. This is what you pull through with. Just be aware when you are pulling through, and just give it a quick strip. when you do pull through, make sure that you go the same way the bullet goes. Always pull out towards the barrel. The tricky bit, again, I've seen people do this in the past, is the gas cylinder itself. You'll see there's a very, very small port at the front here. The larger port at the front of the rifle. Don't make the mistake of sticking 4x2 down here. It will get jammed, you won't be able to get it back out again. This in here doesn't get particularly dirty. The piston does, and this is where you've got to concentrate on cleaning out the ribs, and you need a knife or a screwdriver just to get in there and really hack the shit out of the carbon that builds up. Same with the gas plug. It gets fouled around the area of the ribs and also on the interior here. You can be brutal with these parts. You can get something abrasive like steel wood, steel wool, or some kind of abrasive material like cleaning material like Jif, and it's just a case of just scrubbing and grouting until the carbon comes off. Field expedient, you can just jam that into dirt, give it a good huck around, and that's another way of getting the carbon off. But word to the wise, don't go sticking 4x2 down into the gas cylinder, because it is a horrible tendency to jam, and once it's jammed you're not going to get it out. I think that's about it. I could just waffle on, but I think that's pretty much the guts of it. One final thing, again, if you are in the business of collecting all the bits and gizmos, you will also be able to find the old-fashioned rifle grenade sight. This one is still on Cosmoline, still on its case, and that just fits over the barrel. And there's your sight. It was used to fire the Energra, I think it was, grenade, a big bloody great Panzerfaust looking thing. We never used them. The Brits did for a while, and then they were withdrawn from service in most armies, and everyone went to just using the old American M79. It's a much better alternative. So that's about it. I will at some point in the near future be going out and doing a shoot with this rifle, and we'll go through the zeroing position as well as shooting with the suit sight. Again, if you put SUIT, suit or sight unit infantry trailex, into the search engine, that will provide you with a PDF file with all the correct zeroing positions and information about the suit sight. There is a supply in the US, excuse me for a second, and for those of you who want to go and get yourself an Imperial rifle and you want access to spare parts, this guy, saflithgow.com, Sierra Alpha Foxtrot Lithgow, LITHGOW.com. His name is Pat Jones. He's an Australian ex-armourer from the Australian Army. He's headquartered in Idaho. He has spare parts for Africa for the British and the Australian pattern FNs. And I'd recommend that you do get spare parts, particularly the little clips and springs and pins, etc. If you can get them, hang on to them, because they're starting to become very difficult to find. That's it. Talk to you soon.